Hello and welcome to the Millionaire Millennial. I am your host, Stack Banks. You are now tuned into the most powerful financial podcast in the world. Today, we want to talk about, today is April 25th, 2024. Before I even get into it, please, if you guys are following us or aren't following us on our social medias, please do so. The Millionaire Millennial podcast on Instagram, link trees up there have links to all of our different social medias where you can find us: Spotify, Pandora, Google Cast, Apple Podcast, YouTube, all the above. So before we get into it, I want to touch on crypto today and some stuff that's going on in that space. But in the past couple episodes, we've touched on crypto, and I've talked about a couple different books that you guys can look into that will actually help you process some of this without having to listen to this podcast if you don't want to, or it will help you actually follow along. It's some of the reading material that I've read that's informed me. So number one, if you just want to get a basic introduction and understanding, of blockchain and specifically Bitcoin, crypto, all those things, I would recommend, it's a fairly lengthy read, but this book right here, it's called Mastering Blockchain. It's by Imran Bashar, or Bashir. If he's watching, please excuse me for not pronouncing that correctly. But this book is great. It's about 600 pages. It's not an easy read. It can be dry and technical at times, but sometimes, if you really want to become an expert on something, that's what it takes. Is really just reading the text by the people that are involved in this space. But he mentions a couple other books within that book itself that you can look into, and where he gets the majority of his information that put that together. But that's a great read. Like I said, it is a little bit dry and technical at times, but not always. It's fairly interesting stuff. And then also most of you guys will be familiar with this book series, the For Dummies series, but blockchain data analytics. So this is for you, those of you who are a little bit more familiar on the subject and you want to look into basically discovering how blockchains are disrupting the world and the models that classify and predict and how they analyze the data. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs or CEOs or whatever, this is a great read too, because it allows you to look into the analytical models to help maybe potentially solve business problems. So that's just a little bit of that. I'm not paid by these guys. I'm not shilling these books. I don't get like a seller's recommendation or a discount or whatever. I got them from my library, but they're invaluable stuff. I have other books I will recommend as the episodes go on on differing subjects. But today I wanted to talk about the crypto space and what's going on with it. Today is, I don't know if I said this already or not, but April 25th, 2024. And I wanted to talk about Binance. Now, as history goes on, a lot of you probably will not remember this person. He will probably go the way of Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX founder, I believe, in my personal opinion. But it's something that I believe now that it's happening, and because they've happened in such close proximity to each other, we should take a moment and talk about some of the takeaways. So number one, let me educate you guys, if you don't know, on what's going on. So I'm going to read you an article from The Block, which is one of my favorite digital newsletters. So U.S. prosecutors are seeking 36 months of imprisonment for Changpeng Zhao, founder and former chief executive of Binance, according to a Tuesday filing. So a lot of you may know this guy as CZ. That's what he's commonly referred to. His name is hard to pronounce, but CZ of Binance. He's the CEO, or was the CEO of Binance. So, quote, Zhao's willful violation of U.S. law was no accident or oversight, the Department of Justice said in the filing. Quote, he made a business decision that violating U.S. law was the best way to attract users, build his company, and line his pockets. The United States recommends that the court impose an above-guideline sentence of 36 months of imprisonment, the Department of Justice added. So, in case some of you don't know, Binance is the largest by volume crypto exchange in the world. Okay. CZ was the co-founder and CEO of this company. And the Department of Justice alleged, and he has pled guilty to charges alleging that he essentially operated an exchange that should be regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's, what Wall Street is guided by and oftentimes regulated by. Not saying they do it very well, but it is the body of trust that's supposed to do that. So the SEC had brought charges against him, basically saying that the DOJ had brought charges against him, saying that they were operating essentially an exchange commission or Securities Exchange Commission, unregulated one. And one of the many things that they were doing beyond potentially financing terrorism and crime was through their lack of money laundering mechanisms, or KYC, know your customer mechanisms that most lawful companies, or at least money exchanges, any company that's registered as a money exchange with SEC in the United States is required to do. And essentially CZ had skirted these things in order to grow the company and line his pockets. So the United States wants more than 36 months of imprisonment. It's about 3 years. Federal guidelines, I think you do about 85% of the time. So he'd probably do a little bit less than 3 years, or a little bit more than 3 years is what prosecutors are wanting for him. Now, his defense counsel had responded to the Department of Justice recommendation soon after its filing with its own sentencing memo, and they had requested the court to sentence him to probation. And they had said, quote, Mr. Zhao has paid massive fines. He directed the company to plead guilty before this court and to resolve related civil charges with 3 federal agencies, and these factors strongly favor leniency. So in November, Zhao had pled guilty in the U.S. to anti-money laundering and sanctions violations and had agreed to pay a $50 million fine. And then he also stepped down from his chief executive post, and Binance agreed to pay $4.3 billion in one of the largest corporate settlements in history. And Zhao's sentencing is actually 5 days from now, on April 30th. The former CEO, CZ, remains free on bail after securing his release with a $175 million bond. A judge had previously denied his request to travel to Dubai. And Binance has now appointed Richard Teng as its new CEO after Zhao's departure. Now, some of you might wonder, what's the big deal? So, or why is this newsworthy? Who is this guy? What's going on? How is this going to affect crypto, the crypto markets, all that, right? So long-term effects, I cannot speak to, but I think it's something that we need to talk about today, because FTX, essentially what appears to me to be the same thing, in that you have people who are shilling themselves as founders, right, of an exchange or whatever the case may be. They're operating in the crypto space, which is essentially a regulatory wasteland, right? There you have only so much oversight and reach by the SEC or regulating bodies and Department of Justice, all these things, to do much about what's going on in the space, because it's so new. So much of it, a lot of it is really the definition of what a securities is. There's no body outside of the SEC that's meant to regulate cryptocurrencies, because they didn't exist back when the SEC was first founded and its mission was first set in place. So, not to get too far off into the weeds, but that's part of where I come into play, and those of you who follow me and follow Bankscoin might have an understanding of why compliance, this word compliance that I think you're going to hear more and more of in the crypto space, is such a big issue and so important. And that's why what Bankscoin will seek to do. In Binance, I believe CZ had tweeted something on his Twitter account about his main goals of the year, and one of them was compliance or something like that. But as it turns out, and I don't know if I've got the reading material directly in front of me, but even after this, there have been um, allegations allegedly by DOJ that there's commingling of funds, that there's mishandling of funds, things that CZ had essentially said that he's proud to say isn't happening or aren't happening with Binance. And that's a scary thing because, after the FTX collapse, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, if you don't know what that is, I might just put up an episode going into that. But in short, basically, Sam Bankman-Friedman, as far as I can tell, and I haven't fully looked into all of it because it's still ongoing, and I believe he has yet to be sentenced, or actually I know he hasn't been sentenced yet. But there's a lot to unpack where you have these guys who are fraudsters, essentially, right? And crypto is such a wild west financial space, and you have people who are very lucky in that public opinion at a certain time swayed their way and put them in a position where people did trust them for a time or did trust their platforms and have put liquidity into them, right? And turn these people essentially into a billionaire. Even after all this, CZ is expected to walk away with something like a personal net worth of about 10 to 12 billion dollars, I believe. And when you look at really what he's done, I mean, to me, it seems very shrouded in this kind of professionalism and this face of, well, I really was doing the right thing, and maybe I was too eager to a little bit to do some of the wrong things. And I'm not trying to paint him as a bad guy because it's something I've never talked to him before. I would love to have him on the podcast just so we could, because it's something that I think there's a lot to be learned from people like this and picking their brain. And I understand that he's more than likely going to have to go sit down and do some time, or even if he doesn't and he starts that, I don't think he's someone that should be allowed back into the crypto space. And I think he already is making some type of play, because it just worries me, right? If you're someone who's done this before and you see how easy it is, and you perpetuate potentially a massive fraud, because we're still unpacking exactly what's going on with Binance. A year from now, it might be something that the exchange is shut down and everyone who put liquidity into it or monies into it is defrauded, right? And there's no recourse for that. I don't know. And I don't necessarily want to speculate. I hope not. But it makes me wonder what's stopping these guys, right? And I think part of what needs to come about and what my mission is with Bankscoin is creating a true compliance pathway, right? And I don't think it's going to be done by a exchange, right, who is allowing crypto whales or finding these crypto whales who are putting money onto their exchanges, and you become aware of the fact that potentially the monies that they're putting onto these exchanges are illicit or illegal, and then you contact them to say, hey, maybe you should think about being smarter about how you present this money or get it onto the exchange. I don't think those are the people who should be running the crypto space, or and that's what essentially CZ had done. And I'm assuming probably a laundry list of a whole other bunch of stuff that we're barely scratching the surface of. And same with Sam Bankman-Friedman, or Sam Bankman-Friedman, SBF. I mean, he was releasing like the FTT token that was essentially Chuck E. Cheese coins. It's not worth anything, and trying to like commingle real world assets, like just grimy stuff that not saying it doesn't happen or can't happen in traditional finance, but we have pretty good tabs on this stuff, and it doesn't seem like anyone has figured out ways to combat this in the crypto space. I have, and it's something that right now Bankscoin is undergoing patent at the US Patent Office, and I won't get too far into that, but it is something that here soon I will have a white paper up, and I believe this is the next step for Web3 and for crypto, that someone comes in and operates in a modified function the same way that the FDIC and the SEC does. And I don't think the FDIC or the SEC can do it. I don't think any existing cryptos that are in the market can do it. And I don't think any of the crypto exchanges can do it. I think it needs to come from someone outside. And I think I'm the one to do that. And I think Bankscoin is the tool to do that. I think it's a tool of the ecosystem within the ecosystem of Web3 and crypto that will actually bring about compliance, and I believe will actually allow us to combat inflation on the United States dollar itself. Now, once again, I'm not trying to get too far into this because all of this IP, this intellectual property, is it's going through a process for us to formalize all of this. And it's something that I know there are parties out there that would love to see this not come to fruition, or steal the idea and pervert it into something that where they can perpetuate the next fraud or whatever. But that is not my goal, and none of what I'm saying here is financial advice. All of this is education, but this is my platform and this is my podcast, and I did want to give you guys somewhat of an understanding of what Bankscoin is. If you're curious, stay tuned, please. Latest news will be on this podcast, but just so you guys know, I would recommend, if you have monies or family or friends who have monies on the Binance platform, look into that. Be skeptical of them. I don't think it's a good idea to put any monies there. And you don't have to take my word for it. Those of you who are familiar with the show Shark Tank with Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, there's tons of videos of him talking about it, how he would never put money into Binance just because of the amount of litigation that they're under. I find myself agreeing with him. I think there's a lot of companies you guys need to be very skeptical of. Do your due diligence. Be aware of where you put your dollar and where you get your information from. And like I said, please do your own research on this stuff. This information is free. Your local library, go get these books. Go get, I have others, like I said, I'll be bringing up to you guys as time goes on, but don't rely on others necessarily to educate you on everything you need to know about these spaces if you're going to be investing in them, right? Investing in them. So that was just a quick update. I'm running a little bit long on that, but yes, please be skeptical of Binance, Binance.us. I don't even think Binance.us, I don't even think is operated in the US anymore. I believe they're forced to shut down, but Binance is still operational around the globe, and it's something that I would caution my listeners, wherever you may be around the globe, to be very skeptical of them and what's going on and what stories are being told by the people who run that company and continue to run it, because it's something that the U.S. Department of Justice is not all reaching and all encompassing. And so some of this stuff, they can only do so much and are only willing to do so much because they have limited resources and their own agendas and things that they want to get into. And crypto at the moment might not be the biggest thing. So some of these companies might be getting some slaps on the wrist and then essentially allowed to push forward. And I don't see any reason or rationale of why they wouldn't keep doing what they've been doing in the past. So please be skeptical, do your own research. I'm sorry to those of you who, if you were looking for something that wasn't so crypto related or technically related in crypto today, that's what I have for you. As time goes on, like I said, we will get into personal finance and things like that, investing, entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking to a couple different CEOs. I feel comfortable releasing the names of a few of them. So one will be the hologram company, at least is what I'm hoping for. The hologram company, Proto Hologram, I believe their CEO. I forget his name off the top of my head. But he should be on the podcast here within the next couple of days. And then also Gary Cardone, and as well as Xcentral's founder, that's a social media cryptocurrency NFT platform. Seth Ramsey is the CEO and founder of that, and we'll be talking to them hopefully within the next week or two. Until then, please take care of yourselves. I hope you find value in this. Let me know in the comments on all our platforms which one you tune into, what we can do to improve this podcast, and what you want to know about anything that we didn't cover. Also, to those of you who don't know, the Bitcoin halving also had occurred. We can get into that probably next episode, because I realize we are running long. But happy halving to those of you who celebrated that. I know a lot of you were just staring at blank screen, or not, excuse me, at blank screens, but at screens watching the blocks. So those of you who did, congratulations. We're on our way. I think the next halving event is in 2028. I myself am a huge believer and firm believer in Bitcoin, and I'm excited to see what the future holds and where it goes. But until then, I am your host, Stack Banks. You can check me out on Instagram at stackbanks.official, or check us out, the Millionaire Millennial Podcast, on all platforms. And until then, Stack Banks out.